Hi there, I'm Vincent Bos and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing your ex's memories of you. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing your ex's memories of you. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will wonder what they think of regarding you. I've spoken to many dumpers and will discuss the patterns of what I have found. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing the likely order of the 3 things that your expert dumper remembers about you. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is in 3rd place. So from what I have seen, the 3rd most likely thing that your expert dumper will remember about you is the worst memory. Now this obviously doesn't sound very good. This isn't something that you want to be considering too deeply, but it's something that we have to recognise and acknowledge as reality. From the dumpers I've spoke to, there was a definite correlation, and when I was to ask them about memories and thoughts that they had of their ex-dumpee, that the worst memory, the memory that potentially triggered the breakup, or maybe it wasn't necessarily the actual trigger, but something they would definitively recognise as a bad moment, and probably the worst moment within the relationship, seemed to be the 3rd thing that seemed to be on their mind. So what can we take from this? What can you as a dumpee consider from this, from my own research? Well, I would suggest that it shows 2 main things. Firstly, somebody isn't going to forget bad behaviour. Somebody isn't going to forget something terrible which happened. Nobody is going to completely remove from their mindset something that they don't deem good. So if you're worried about a situation that took place between you that wasn't great, maybe that is not doing it the service it deserves. When I say it's not great, it was awful, it was bad, it was the worst memory. If you're worried that they still think about that, well, in some part, you are actually right. It's true, it's accurate. They haven't forgot it, and they do at times think of it. But from a more positive perspective, what we can see from this is it isn't the main thing that they tend to think about. Now again, this is from my own research. This is from asking the dumpers that I spoke with on this subject within this question. Not every single person put it in 3rd place, but absolutely there was a correlation, there was a pattern of what most dumpers seemed to do. They seemed to place that worst memory, that memory that they really don't want to remember, but unfortunately they do, and like I said, it could somewhat be connected to the breakup, if not just before the end of a relationship. Perhaps it was the beginning of the end. Perhaps it was something which started a trail of events which eventually led to the point of where they actually the breakup. You could argue it is when they started to lose romantic emotional attraction. This is something that they remember. It's not the main thing they remember, it's not the first thing they remember, but most dumpers from my own research seem to put in 3rd place the worst memory of you, and in that regard, for relationship, that is what they hold within their mind. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube, and if you have the new hype feature, please hype this video as well. If you like my content, subscribe to the channel to keep updated. And point number 2 is in 2nd place. So this is now the 2nd most likely thing that your expert dumper remembers about you, the memories they have of you and the relationship that you had together. And in 2nd place, it is the most recent memory. So this is obviously the thing which has happened most recently between you. Now, there is a good chance that this is actually a situation where you 2 were together in person, quite possibly at the end of your relationship. But it doesn't necessarily mean that. So although it could be when you were together, unfortunately the breakup was actioned, that is the last memory they might have of you 2, depending on the dynamic you had and the history and what took place post-breakup. But as I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that. There could be memories post-breakup. Now maybe again these are in person. Perhaps you met again to try and sort things out and sadly it didn't roll that way. Maybe you met up again to exchange items. Perhaps you bumped into each other. Maybe it wasn't about a physical interaction, it was more about texting or calls. As you can see, this could be the actual end of your relationship, but it could be post-breakup. It could be after the breakup took place, whether you're trying to sort things out, or whether you perhaps as a dumpee were trying to get your ex back. Maybe you reached out to your dumper. Maybe you tried to make contact. That would be the most recent memory. Now it's important to say that point number 2 here can link with point number 1. When we're talking about within point number 1, the worst memory, maybe the worst memory was in fact the most recent memory. Maybe this was something which does have a link. Not necessarily, hopefully not. We don't want the worst memory to be the most recent memory because that, unfortunately, is not a good thing for your ex-dumper to be focusing on. We don't want your ex-dumper to be remembering the very last moments they had with you physically to actually be the worst moment within the relationship. Now, though you might say, well, surely it was. That's why they ended it. No, not necessarily. You might consider the worst moment happened months before, and then the actual end of a relationship was something somewhat calm. Okay, you didn't want it to take place. They, deep down, didn't want it to take place. They felt they had to action the breakup. That's the most recent memory. It doesn't necessarily mean it was the worst thing that happened. It wasn't the moment they found out that you cheated on them, potentially. For you who cheated on your partner and then got dumped, as you can see, there could be a difference between that last memory and a moment previously where maybe they found something out and the attraction dropped and then something took place, unfortunately, where the relationship was decided it couldn't continue. So as you can see, the most recent memory doesn't necessarily have to be the worst, but it could be. It doesn't necessarily have to be within the relationship at the time of the breakup, but it could be. It could be post-breakup. It could be nothing regarding you trying to reconnect. It could be you bump into each other randomly. Maybe you didn't even want to see your dumper, and they maybe didn't really want to interact with you, but you saw one another, and you decided to have a polite conversation, and it went quite well. So maybe you didn't really want to have that conversation. Maybe they didn't really want to have that conversation, but you did. It went well, and that is their most recent memory. That is something that they are thinking of more than the worst memory. Because as I said, in second place, out of those top 3 thoughts and memories they have of you, the dumpee, is the most recent memory. So what can we take from this as a dumpee if you're listening, if you want to try to get your ex back? What does this mean? Well, from what I would take from this, it shows that the most recent memory does have a lot of value. And that's why it's really important, if you've been dumped, to try and leave a positive thought in your ex-dumper's mind. And you might be thinking, well, it wasn't a positive moment. It wasn't a great moment that we had last together. Maybe you're blaming yourself. Maybe you're frustrated with yourself. But at the end of the day, if you decide to think, okay, I need to change this, I need to create a new, most recent memory. I'm going to try and reach out to my dumper. I'm going to try and change this. I'm going to try and create something more positive. If you do this, the likelihood is you're going to make things worse. Because from what I have seen, most dumpers do not want to be chased by their dumpee. If you've been dumped, the best option I would suggest in most instances is to never contact your ex again unless they contact you first. If you try and chase them, if you try and change their mind, that is unlikely to work. And therefore, even if the most recent memory isn't great, even if you think that you did something wrong, you can't try and chase your dumper to change that thought, because you might actually make things worse. There might be a new most recent memory that is also not very good in their mind, because they don't want to be hassled, they don't want to be pressured, they don't want to be chased. So I would say, even if you don't think this is the best moment for you, well, you've just got to try and focus on moving forward in a positive way and be ready. Because if you do cross paths with your ex again, if you do hear from them again, that is when you've got to try and change that memory. Not you chasing them, but if things evolve into a point where you see each other once more, or they reach out to you, that is when you change it, not by you chasing. You don't change it by trying to force the issue, you change it by being ready. If you fail to prepare, then you should prepare to fail. This is where you are preparing. You're getting ready. The harder we work, the luckier we become. I believe that luck is where preparation meets opportunity. You need to prepare, and then when the opportunity comes up, you will be ready to take full advantage of creating a new positive memory as the most recent memory. So be ready, do what you can to be ready, but don't try and force that issue. Even if the most recent memory is not great, well, you've got to live with that and make sure that if you get that chance again, you make sure that you create something a lot better. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website, www.dateme.tips, for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the buildup of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description. And point number 3 is in first place. So now we're talking about first place within today's podcast. The clearest memory that your ex-dumper is likely to have of you, and that is the best memory of you. So this could be you as a person per se, but generally speaking, it will be connected within the relationship of you two when you were together. First place, the clearest memory, is likely to be the best memory. And that's wonderful, because it shows that even though you're broken up, even though they ended the relationship, even though things don't look great right now, when they look back, when they think back, when they remember you as that person, most dumpers are going to remember the best memory of you two as the first most important memory. Now, of course, this isn't every single dumper. I can't guarantee that your ex falls into this category, but this is the pattern that I saw. This is where most dumpers fell into these categories. This is what I saw as the pattern. Now, if you were in a negative relationship, if you were in an abusive relationship, if you were the person who was causing your now dumper a lot of upset, then you're probably not going to be falling into this category, okay? You would know deep down if you treated your ex-dumper really, really badly. If you did, then in first place, in their clearest memory, it probably won't be the best memory. Because as it stands, you have to respect the fact that you didn't treat your ex well, and things are not going to fall for you in the way that you would probably hope. But most of you listening did not treat your dumper terribly. Most of you listening are not abusers. Most of you listening did not treat your ex in a way where they are going to focus on such negativity. Most dumpers end the relationship not due to being in an abusive relationship, but instead because they lost romantic emotional attraction for other reasons, such as complacency. That's not nice to hear, dumpies, but that is something which is very, very common. And I guess you would rather be dumped for being complacent rather than being dumped because you were abusive. Okay, so if you consider it in that way, most of you are not going to fall in the category that I've just described that wouldn't put you in this pattern. Most of you are in this pattern where the dumper is going to have as their first, most clearest memory to be the best memory of you. Now, some of you might see this as rose-tinted glasses, looking back and remembering the best. Some of you will understand what I've spoken about in prior podcasts about the fading effect bias, where negative memories fade sooner over time in comparison to positive memories. My research fitted in quite well with what I'd read and researched previously about the fading effect bias. It does fit that most people look back and they see things in a happier way than perhaps they actually were. They've ended a relationship, they haven't forgot why, they haven't forgot the worst moments, as we could see, that is still in their top 3, that they would be thinking back, but what they have done is they have removed some of that negativity and placed it to one side so they can still look back on somebody they've dumped and see the bright side, see the happiness, remember the times where there was fun, laughter and love. And if you're a dumpee that want to get your ex back, this can really help you. Because to get your ex back, you need to regrow romantic emotional attraction in their mind. And one of the best ways for this to happen is for you to implement my version of the no contact rule. If you do this, you're going to be leaving your ex-dumper to their own thoughts. You're not going to be bothering them. You're not going to be stressing them out. You're not going to be forcing them into a corner where they see you negatively. Instead, you're letting them live their life and remember the things they want to remember. And as we've just said, the main thing they are likely to remember is a positive thought about you. That is likely to be their memory. So let's leave them to remember you in a positive light and let time tick by so hopefully they start to regrow romantic emotional attraction and begin to miss you. Now, this doesn't mean you should be sitting at home clock watching, just waiting for the time your ex-dumper misses you and reaches out, because unfortunately, not all of you will get that opportunity. Not all of you will get your ex back. There are no guarantees. But there is a very good possibility that if you implement my version of a no contact rule, if you live your life in a positive way, if you didn't treat your ex-dumper absolutely appallingly during your relationship, and they can look back in a positive light, then as time ticks by, this positive thought they have of you will start to shine brighter. They'll start to wonder where you are and what you're doing, begin to think of you, then miss you, then crave you, and hopefully then reach out to you.